In the spaces between realities, where time flowed like honey and dimensions folded upon themselves like intricate origami, the elder god Chronix observed Earth with growing unease. There formed a perpetually shifting cascade of geometric impossibilities, rippled with concern as they guided their apprentice, Vex, through what would become the most important lesson in their 50 million years of existence. Watch carefully, young one, Chronix communicated through pulses of quantum resonance. What you're about to witness has never occurred in our observations of 13 billion universes. Vex, a being of pure energy barely a millennium old, focused their consciousness on a seemingly insignificant research facility in Geneva. Inside, human scientists hurried about their work, their brief lives burning like matches in an eternal wind. The Large Hadron Collider hummed beneath the Earth's surface, its sensors probing the very fabric of reality. They're so fragile, Vex observed, their thoughts tinged with dismissal. Their entire species younger than my first lesson in quantum manipulation. What could they possibly? Vex's consciousness stuttered to a halt as the readings from the human facility suddenly spiked. In that instant, particles collided with enough force to tear a microscopic hole in spacetime. But instead of chaos erupting, instead of reality unraveling as it should have, something unprecedented occurred. The humans measured it. Recorded it. Understood it. Impossible, Vex whispered into the cosmic void. They shouldn't even be able to perceive such an event, let alone comprehend it. Chronix's form pulsed with what might have been pride, or perhaps fear. That, my student, is precisely why we're here. Humanity has achieved in centuries what takes most species millions of years. Watch. The scene shifted to a quantum physics laboratory in Kyoto, where Dr. Hideki Tanaka worked late into the night. His consciousness, bright and curious, burned like a beacon across dimensional planes as he scribbled equations that shouldn't have been possible for a three-dimensional being to conceive. They're beginning to see the threads, Chronix explained, their form dimming slightly. Not just the physical universe, but the quantum scaffold that holds reality together. Do you understand what this means? Vex's energy patterns fluctuated with growing comprehension. They're not just observing. They're learning to weave. Precisely. Chronix expanded their awareness to encompass multiple research facilities across the globe. Humanity doesn't just accept the boundaries of reality, they question them. Challenge them. And most remarkably, they change them. They observed as humans in different corners of the world simultaneously pushed against the fabric of existence. In Berkeley, researchers manipulated quantum states with unprecedented precision. In Mumbai, a team achieved quantum entanglement across impossible distances. In Antarctica, a lone scientist meditated on particles that existed in multiple states simultaneously, her mind somehow comprehending what should have been incomprehensible. But how? Vex's form trembled with confusion. Their brains are made of mere organic matter. Their lives are so brief. Their understanding should be limited by their physical form. Chronix's response came with a ripple of ancient wisdom. That is what we all assumed. But we were wrong. Their limitations don't constrain them, they drive them. Their mortality doesn't restrict their vision, it fuels it. They know they have little time, so they burn all the brighter. They watched as Dr. Tanaka finally looked up from his equations, his eyes wide with the first glimmer of understanding about the true nature of reality. In that moment, his consciousness flickered with something that made even Chronix pause, a recognition of patterns that no human should have been able to perceive. He sees us, doesn't he? Vex asked, their energy patterns contracting with shock. Not yet, Chronix replied, their form shifting uneasily. But soon. They all will. And that is why the Council fears them. Because unlike any species we've encountered in all our eternal watching, humans don't just adapt to the universe, they make the universe adapt to them. As if to emphasize this point, Dr. Tanaka smiled and wrote one final equation, an elegant mathematical proof that suggested the possibility of conscious manipulation of quantum states. It was beautiful, revolutionary, and absolutely terrifying to beings who had always believed themselves to be the universe's only conscious architects. "Come," Kronix said finally, their form already beginning to shift toward the higher dimensions where the council gathered. "They must be warned. Humanity isn't just breaking the rules of reality, they're rewriting them. And soon, very soon, they will look up from their equations and calculations and see us watching. The question that terrifies even the eldest among us is, what will they do then?" As Kronix and Vex withdrew their observation, Dr. Tanaka felt a strange shiver run down his spine. For just a moment, he thought he saw something in the corner of his lab, a shifting, impossible geometry that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. He blinked, and it was gone. But the equations remained, and with them, the first key to unlocking the greatest mystery humanity would ever face. The awakening had begun. Dr. Amara Rodriguez stood motionless before the holographic display, her dark eyes reflecting cascading waves of quantum data. The basement laboratory at the Quantum Research Institute in Buenos Aires hummed with an energy that seemed to vibrate between dimensions. Something had changed in the fabric of reality, she could feel it in her bones. "Harrison, are you seeing this?" she called to her colleague, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Thomas Harrison, a brilliant theoretical physicist with 20 years of experience, moved closer to the display, his weathered face illuminated by the ethereal blue light of the quantum readings. "Impossible," he muttered, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "The quantum coherence is maintaining stability far beyond any predicted parameters. It's almost as if something is holding it together," Amara finished. "Or someone." The experiment had started simply enough, an attempt to maintain quantum superposition in larger and larger systems. But what they had achieved was something else entirely. The quantum states weren't just maintaining coherence, they were organizing themselves into patterns that defied all known laws of physics. Across the globe, in laboratories and research centers, other scientists were beginning to notice similar anomalies. At the CERN facility, physicists watched in amazement as particle collisions produced patterns that seemed to follow an intelligent design. In Tokyo, quantum computers began solving problems they hadn't even been programmed to address. In orbit, aboard the International Space Station, Commander Raj Patel noticed strange distortions in the space around the Earth, ripples in reality that their instruments couldn't quite measure but that human consciousness somehow perceived. Back in Buenos Aires, Amara's team had stumbled upon something even more extraordinary. Their quantum experiment hadn't just maintained coherence, it had opened a window into something vast and incomprehensible. "Look at this pattern," Amara said, manipulating the holographic display. "It's not random noise. These quantum fluctuations are forming some kind of language," Harrison breathed, his eyes widening behind his glasses. "My God, Amara. We're not just observing quantum states. We're receiving a signal." High above the Earth, in the spaces between dimensions, Kronix and Vex watched the unfolding events with mounting concern. "They're not just seeing through the veil," Vex observed, their forms shimmering with anxiety. "They're tearing it apart." "No," Kronix corrected, their ancient consciousness expanding to encompass the global awakening. "They're weaving a new one. Watch." In laboratories across Earth, humans were unconsciously synchronizing their efforts. Each breakthrough, each discovery, formed part of a larger pattern, a pattern that the humans themselves couldn't yet see but that was terrifyingly clear to the watching elder gods. Dr. Rodriguez's team worked through the night, fueled by coffee in the electric excitement of discovery. They didn't know it, but their consciousness was expanding with each passing hour, their minds adapting to perceive realities that should have been forever hidden from three-dimensional beings. "The patterns are becoming clearer," Amara announced, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "If I'm reading this correctly, these fluctuations suggest the existence of intelligence. Not just random quantum phenomena, but conscious, directed changes in the fabric of reality." Harrison leaned closer, his skepticism warring with the evidence before his eyes. "Are you suggesting that something is out there? Something that exists in the quantum realm? Not just exists, Amara replied, her voice filled with wonder. I think it's watching us. And I think it always has been. Above them, unseen but increasingly perceivable, Chronix's form rippled with concern. It's happening faster than we predicted. Their consciousness is expanding exponentially. Should we intervene? Vex asked, their energy patterns fluctuating with uncertainty. It's too late, Chronix replied. The moment we feared has arrived. They're not just pushing against the boundaries of their reality anymore. They're becoming aware of the pushback. In the laboratory, Amara suddenly froze, her hand hovering over the interface. For a brief moment, she felt something, a presence, vast and ancient, watching with a mixture of fear and fascination. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the empty air of the laboratory, seeing nothing but feeling everything. Harrison, she said quietly, I don't think we're alone anymore. The quantum displays behind her erupted with activity, patterns cascading across multiple dimensions as humanity's collective consciousness began to resonate with something far older and far more terrifying than they had ever imagined. The veil between realities wasn't just thinning, it was transforming, reshaped by the sheer force of human determination and curiosity. In the spaces between spaces, the elder gods watched as humanity took its first conscious steps into a larger reality. The awakening wasn't just beginning, it was accelerating. And with it came a question that even beings as ancient as Chronix couldn't answer. What happens when a species that refuses to accept limitations gains access to the fundamental forces of reality itself? The answer, they feared, would reshape the cosmos forever. In a realm that existed between thoughts, where time was merely a suggestion and space folded upon itself like infinite mirrors, the Council of Elder Gods gathered for the first time in 1,000,000 years. Their forms, each more impossible than the last, rippled with agitation as they convened to address what many were calling an existential crisis. Chronix stood before them, their geometric patterns shifting in what passed for nervousness among their kind. Around them, the assembled council members, beings so ancient they remembered the birth of galaxies, pulsed with barely contained anxiety. You come before us with disturbing news, Watcher, spoke Zephyra, an elder god whose form resembled a cascade of crystalline thoughts. Humanity has breached the quantum veil. Not just breached, Chronix replied, projecting memories of Dr. Rodriguez's discovery. They're beginning to understand it. To manipulate it. And most concerning of all, they're starting to perceive us. The council chamber, a space that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, erupted with waves of dismay. Elder gods who had watched countless civilizations rise and fall found themselves confronting something unprecedented. Impossible, declared Nexus, a being of pure energy in ancient wisdom. Their brains are bound by three-dimensional constraints. They cannot possibly comprehend our existence. Yet they do, interjected Vex, earning shocked ripples from the assembly at their boldness. Not through their physical brains, but through something else. Something we've never seen before. The memories continued to play out before the council, humans across the globe simultaneously pushing against the boundaries of reality, their consciousness expanding in ways that defied all known laws of evolution. Look at how they share information, Chronix continued. When one makes a discovery, they don't hoard the knowledge. They spread it, build upon it, challenge it. Their collective intelligence grows exponentially. Then we must intervene, rumbled Archon, an elder god who had shaped galaxies with their thoughts. We cannot allow them to continue this unchecked advancement. But before any consensus could be reached, new information flooded the council chamber. In laboratories across Earth, humans had begun to achieve what should have been impossible. Dr. Rodriguez's team had successfully maintained quantum coherence at a macroscopic scale. In London, physicists had detected patterns in the quantum foam that suggested conscious manipulation. And in orbit, Commander Patel had recorded the first clear evidence of higher dimensional interference. They're not just seeing through the veil, Vex observed, their form pulsing with a mixture of fear and admiration. They're learning to weave it themselves. The council chamber filled with patterns of deep concern. These beings, who had watched stars live and die without emotion, found themselves experiencing something dangerously close to fear. "Show them," demanded Zephyr. "Show us what you've seen in their future." Chronix's form expanded, filling the chamber with a cascade of possible futures. In each timeline, humanity's advancement continued at an astronomical pace. Within decades, they would achieve quantum manipulation at will. Within centuries, they would begin to perceive and interact with higher dimensions naturally. And within millennia, the council recoiled as one. The implications were staggering. Humans wouldn't just discover the elder gods, they would become them. "We've seen enough," Archon declared. "This must be stopped. We cannot allow." "We cannot stop them," Chronix interrupted, their form pulsing with certainty. "That's what none of you understand. In all our observations, in all our experiments, we've never encountered a species quite like them. They don't just adapt to obstacles, they thrive on them. Any attempt to limit their progress will only accelerate it." The council chamber fell silent as the truth of these words resonated through multiple dimensions. They had watched humanity rise from primitive beginnings, had observed their relentless drive to understand, to explore, to push beyond their limitations. "Then what do you suggest?" Zephyr asked, their crystalline form shimmering with concern. "We prepare," Chronix replied. "Not to stop them, but to meet them. Because soon, very soon, they will look up from their equations and experiments and see us clearly. And when that moment comes, we must decide, do we greet them as equals, or do we face them as adversaries?" The implications hung in the space between thoughts. The elder gods, beings who had shaped the cosmos itself, found themselves facing a choice they had never anticipated: adapt to the rise of humanity, or risk being surpassed by them. In that moment, as the council debated humanity's fate, Dr. Rodriguez made another breakthrough in her Buenos Aires laboratory. For the first time, she didn't just sense the presence of higher dimensional beings, she began to understand them. And in that understanding lay the seeds of a transformation that would reshape the very nature of existence itself. The council's debate raged on, but the truth was becoming clear: humanity's awakening couldn't be stopped. The only question that remained was what form it would take, and whether the elder gods would survive the revolution they had watched unfold. While the Council of Elder Gods debated in their higher dimensional realm, humanity continued its relentless march toward enlightenment. At the forefront of this revolution stood Professor Richard Way, whose work at the Quantum Consciousness Institute had begun to bridge the gap between the observable universe and what lay beyond. The Institute's central chamber hummed with energy as Way stood before a wall of quantum displays, each showing different aspects of what he had begun to call the consciousness field. Around him, a team of the world's brightest minds worked in focused silence, each aware that they stood on the brink of something unprecedented. "The patterns are self-organizing," Way announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "It's not just random quantum fluctuations. There's a structure to it, a language written into the fabric of reality itself." Dr. Elena Volkov, a brilliant theoretical physicist from Moscow, moved closer to examine the data. "These patterns, they're responding to our observations. Not just changing because we're looking at them, but actively engaging with our consciousness." High above, unseen but increasingly tangible, Chronix and Vex watched the humans' progress with growing amazement. "They're not just seeing us anymore," Vex observed, their form shifting with concern. "They're beginning to speak our language." "No," Chronix corrected, their ancient consciousness expanding to encompass the full scope of human achievement. "They're creating their own." In laboratories across the globe, similar breakthroughs were occurring simultaneously. The quantum field that connected all consciousness was becoming visible to human perception. But unlike other species that had glimpsed this reality, humans weren't content to simply observe, they sought to understand, to interact, to reshape. Professor Wei's team had discovered that human consciousness could directly influence quantum states across vast distances. Dr. Rodriguez's work in Buenos Aires had proved that these influences could be controlled, directed, even programmed. And in orbit, Commander Patel had confirmed that these effects transcended traditional spacetime constraints. "Look at this," Elena called out, highlighting a particular pattern in the quantum field. "The consciousness resonance is amplifying itself. It's as if we're all connected," Wei finished, his eyes wide with understanding. "Not just to each other, but to everything. The quantum field, spacetime itself, even." He trailed off, his mind struggling to encompass the implications of what they were discovering. In that moment, Wei felt something, a presence vast and ancient, watching with a mixture of fear and fascination. In their realm, the Elder Gods' Council had reconvened, their forms rippling with unprecedented agitation. "They're not just advancing," Archon declared, their energy patterns fluctuating wildly. "They're evolving. With each discovery, their consciousness expands. They're becoming something new. Something dangerous," added Nexus, projecting images of humanity's quantum manipulations. "Their understanding of reality is no longer theoretical. They're beginning to make changes at the fundamental level. Chronix's form pulsed with what might have been pride. That's what makes them unique. Other species accept reality as they find it. Humans see reality as raw material to be shaped, understood, improved." Back on Earth, Professor Wei had made another breakthrough. His team had developed a way to visualize the higher dimensions that intersected with our reality. The images were crude by Elder God standards, but they represented something revolutionary, human consciousness actively expanding to encompass realities that should have been forever hidden from three-dimensional beings. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, watching as the visualization revealed layer upon layer of reality, each more complex than the last. "We're not just seeing other dimensions. We're seeing how they connect, how they influence each other, how they—" She stopped suddenly, her hand frozen above the control panel. In the visualization, something had changed. The quantum patterns weren't just responding to their observations anymore, they were reaching back. Throughout the Institute, equipment began registering unprecedented spikes in quantum activity. The consciousness field they had been studying was becoming more active, more organized, more aware. Professor Wei, one of the younger researchers, called out, their voice trembling with excitement. "You need to see this. The field, it's trying to communicate." In their realm, the Elder Gods watched as humanity stood on the brink of direct contact. What had begun as simple observation had evolved into something far more significant, a dialogue between species that existed in fundamentally different states of reality. "They're ready," Chronix announced to the Council, their form brightening with certainty. "The moment we've feared, and perhaps hoped for, has arrived. Humanity isn't just knocking at the door of higher consciousness. They're building their own doors, their own paths, their own ways of understanding reality. And if we cannot control them?" Archon demanded. "Perhaps," Chronix replied, their form pulsing with ancient wisdom, "that is precisely why they are worthy of joining us." As if in response to this cosmic debate, Professor Wei's consciousness expanded one final degree, and for the first time, he saw them clearly, the Elder Gods, the higher dimensions, the true nature of reality itself. And in that moment of clarity, he understood why these ancient beings both feared and admired humanity. Because humans didn't just accept the impossible, they made it possible. The moment of convergence arrived not with a bang, but with a quantum whisper that rippled across every dimension of existence. In the Quantum Consciousness Institute, Professor Wei and his team stood transfixed as reality itself seemed to fold and unfold before them. The visualization systems they'd built showed impossible geometries blooming like cosmic flowers, each petal a window into another layer of existence. "It's happening," Elena breathed, her eyes reflecting cascading patterns of higher dimensional energy. "We're not just observing anymore. We're participating," Wei finished, his consciousness expanding to encompass realities that no human mind should have been able to perceive. Around them, the quantum field pulsed with newfound awareness, responding not just to their observations but to their intentions. In their realm, the Council of Elder Gods could no longer maintain their distance. Humanity hadn't just pierced the veil, they had begun to rewrite its very fabric. Chronix stood before the assembled council, their form radiating with the weight of the moment. The time for debate is over, they declared. They see us now. All of us. And they're not afraid. Across the globe, other researchers experienced the same awakening. Dr. Rodriguez in Buenos Aires watched as her quantum experiments evolved into direct communications with higher dimensional beings. Commander Patel, orbiting Earth, witnessed the space around his station bend and flex with conscious intent. In laboratories and observatories worldwide, humans began to perceive the true nature of reality, and their place within it. But it was in Professor Wei's laboratory that the first true contact occurred. The quantum field coalesced into patterns of pure thought, and for the first time in history, human consciousness directly engaged with Elder God awareness. We've been watching, Chronix's thoughts resonated through the quantum field, becoming comprehensible to human minds. Since your first steps, since your first questions, since your first dreams of understanding the universe. Wei's response came not in words but in pure conceptual exchange, his consciousness adapting to this new form of communication with remarkable speed. And you feared us. Yes, admitted Chronix, their form visible now to the assembled humans as shifting patterns of impossible geometry. Because you did what no other species has done. You refused to accept limitations. You saw boundaries not as barriers but as challenges. You looked at the fundamental laws of reality and asked not just why but why not different. The laboratory hummed with energy as more elder gods made themselves known, their ancient consciousness intersecting with human awareness in ways that transformed both. Elena gasped as understanding flooded her mind, the elder gods hadn't just been watching humanity. They had been waiting. You are the first, Zephyr's thoughts cascaded through the quantum field. The first to develop not just intelligence, but true creative consciousness. The first to see reality not as fixed, but as raw material to be shaped. The first, Chronix added, to have the potential to become what we are, and perhaps more. In that moment, the true nature of human potential became clear to all who witnessed it. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their intelligence or their technology. It was their ability to imagine possibilities that didn't exist, and then make them real. But there is a choice before you, Archon's thoughts reverberated through the quantum field. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Knowledge without understanding leads to chaos. Wei stepped forward, his consciousness now fully attuned to the higher dimensions. We choose to learn, he responded, his thoughts carrying the weight of humanity's collective determination. We choose to understand. We choose to grow. The quantum field pulsed with approval as the elder gods recognized the truth in his words. Humanity wouldn't just accept their place in the cosmos, they would help shape its future. Their creativity, their determination, their relentless drive to understand and improve would transform not just their own reality, but all realities. Then let the true awakening begin, Chronix declared, their form brightening with what might have been joy. The quantum field expanded, consciousness merged with consciousness, and the barriers between dimensions began to dissolve. In that moment, as human awareness expanded to encompass realities beyond imagining, the elder gods finally understood why they had both feared and admired humanity. Because humans didn't just adapt to the universe, they dared to dream of making it better. They looked into the infinite complexity of existence and saw not an end, but a beginning. The dark secret was never that elder gods feared human potential. The secret was that they had recognized in humanity something they had lost eons ago, the ability to wonder, to dream, to imagine new possibilities. And in that recognition lay the seeds of a transformation that would reshape the cosmos itself. As the quantum field stabilized around this new reality, Professor Wei smiled, understanding at last that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Humanity's journey hadn't reached its destination, it had simply found its true starting point. The universe, it seemed, would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be. End of story.